well, here's to hoping that the baby stays asleep long enough for me to record this video without being interrupted. Anyway, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Becoming Baez. It is Haley here, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects of all time, actually. Today we're going to be talking about breastfeeding, and it's kind of surprising how long it's taken me to get around to filming this particular video because I am a huge proponent of breastfeeding. I have been for a really long time now, actually. Hazel herself is exclusively breastfed, and purely just from day one of our journey, even before, while I was still pregnant and was considering how I wanted to feed my baby, just looking back on the last 6 months that we've been on this journey together, it's just been really rewarding and really exciting. And so I decided the other night that it was time for me to film a video about it. So I asked on my Instagram for you guys to send me questions. I know that when I was pregnant before Hazel was born and I had no idea what to expect with breastfeeding, I know I had a ton of questions. And I was really excited that a lot of you reached out and had some that I didn't even expect or didn't even really think about. So that's what today's video is going to be about, is just answering anything you guys want to know. And as I answer your questions, I'll also make sure to kind of go in and talk to you guys a little bit about my own experience. Also, if you hear like random noises in the background, it's the baby monitor. So let's get started. All right, so the first question I actually got kind of a lot, and it's, does it hurt? So the answer is kind of twofold here. In the beginning, yes, it does. I'm not gonna beat around the bush there. No matter what you do or how you try and prepare, it does hurt in the beginning because it's an adjustment, right? Your body's not used to having to feed another life, and babies are kind of savages when it comes to latching. So it takes a while for your nipples to adjust and, I guess, quote, toughen up. Some people will tell you to start like toughening up your nipples beforehand. I don't really think that's necessary. And other people will say, oh, well, if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. That's also BS. It's gonna hurt in the beginning no matter what. It's honestly different for everyone. You know, for me, for my first month, really, it was pretty brutal feeding Hazel. And we tried a number of different things, and it took that full month and also us trying different positions for it to get better. So that's actually a really important tip, is to try and not just stick to one particular hold, because there's a number of different ways to hold your baby when you breastfeed. You can hold them like the classic cradle hold, or you can do crossbody or football hold. And for us, we were doing cradle hold, and it was just so painful. I mean, truly for those first few weeks, I would just be in tears whenever I'd have to feed her. And that was hard, but we tried a different hold after a few weeks, and it was like a night and day difference. It was so much easier, and it was so not painful. It felt natural. So I think it's just a matter of A, finding the right hold for you. I don't think a lot of people realize that can make a difference. And B, just giving it time. You know, a lot of women will say, oh, after the first week, it's super easy, or 2 weeks. But like I said, for me, it took a whole month. So in the beginning, yes, it does hurt, but oh my gosh, after that first month, for me, it's been just bliss. It gets so much easier and so much more natural, and it becomes like a really great way to bond with your baby, and it's just relaxing. It's not like, I was so worried about breastfeeding in the beginning when I was pregnant, and I didn't know what to expect. And then once she was born and I started to just kind of do it, you know, it just became the most natural thing in the world. And now we both love it. She's gotten more efficient, I've gotten more efficient, and I'm so glad that I stuck it out. I really am. Do you have any tips on how to get your baby to latch on better? It's interesting. I am lucky because Hazel and I never had an issue with latching. She latched immediately. And I didn't really know what latching looked like until I read a lot of books and saw like diagrams and images of what it was supposed to look like. Do your research. Honestly, doing your research and looking up what a latch looks like, how the baby's supposed to latch onto the nipple. Like, this sounds so weird, but you would think like, oh, here's the nipple, baby's mouth goes on the nipple. That's not really how it works. Like, here's the nipple, baby's mouth actually kind of goes underneath all the way onto the areola, and I didn't know that. Like, that's what signifies a good latch, is when they have like the entire thing in their mouth. And I know a lot of you guys are probably watching this like, oh God, trust me, I know it sounds weird and I know it sounds graphic, but truly, like, breastfeeding is 100% the most natural, most human thing that we can do in a way to nurture our young. So like, don't think of it in a weird way. It truly is so human and so normal. But as far as tips in order to latch better or easier, like I said, Hazel latched immediately, so I never had that problem. I know that nipple shields can be really helpful, but the best thing in my opinion to do is to talk to a lactation consultant. Depending on where you delivered, if you delivered at a hospital or a birthing center, a lot of those places will have resources for you if you contact them after the baby's born and say, hey, I'm having issues with latching or whatever it is with your baby. They'll put you in touch with the hospital's lactation consultant, and you'll be able to get in touch with them, get advice on how to make things work. Just take advantage of resources because there are so many available out there. It's really important to learn and take advantage of those, I think. Let's see, number 3, your opinion on public breastfeeding and would you do it? Absolutely, yes. I was so torn when it came to public breastfeeding in the beginning because I was like, oh, this is weird. It's like my boobs are out, but here's my thing is, if my baby's hungry, I'm gonna feed her. And you know, I have a nursing cover and we tried to use it a few times, and I remember especially when she was like little, like less than a month old, and we would go out every once in a while, I would like cover her up, but I was like so stressed out and I was so anxious about it, and like it just made me so anxious. But she has always hated a nursing cover from like day one. She's never liked it. I mean, they get hot under there, they sweat. And it took me until we took a trip over Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving, to New York. And long story short, we had a diverted flight which took us into Chicago, and it was a disaster. We were stuck into O'Hare Airport until like 1 in the morning. And this poor kid was hungry, she was fussy, she was just a mess. Like it's 1 a.m. and it's so bright. And ultimately, I was so stressed out about just getting her into a safe, comfortable environment, whether it was a hotel room or back on the plane, that I just didn't care. And she was screaming, and I'm like, I'm not gonna look around and try and find a place to feed my kid that nobody can see me. If she's hungry, I'm gonna feed her. And that was ultimately like the turning point for me to decide, like, you know what, if my baby's hungry, I really don't care where I am, I'm gonna feed my child. And that's really all there is to it. I'm not trying to be lewd or like sexy by like people who sexualize breastfeeding are so weird, like, and so gross. That's not at all what it is. Ultimately, I'm gonna feed my baby when she's hungry, no matter where that is and no matter when that is. So yes, I'm a big proponent and big fan of public breastfeeding. Okay, camera died. Sorry if it's a different angle, my bad. But anyway, let's continue. Is Hazel only breastfed or is she bottle fed as well? Hazel is exclusively breastfed, but we do give her bottles of pumped milk. So I have a pretty decent storage of frozen milk in our freezer, which is really great for travel. In fact, Rick and I have a trip for a little over a week that's coming up in April where we won't be bringing her. So that having all of that milk saved up for her is like super nice for peace of mind. But yeah, we purposely waited until not as long as you might think. Most people say to not introduce a bottle until the first month is done. I personally disagree with that, and so does my pediatrician, or Hazel's pediatrician, I should say. When I originally asked when she thought it'd be okay to introduce a bottle, she said essentially right then, and that was at the 2-week mark. And the reason is because you don't want her to get to the point where, or your baby, boy or girl, get to the point where they won't accept anything but a breast. So we introduced pacifiers early, we introduced bottles early, and she's never had a problem taking any of them. So I would say she gets probably a bottle once every other day or so. You know, if I'm out at a spin class, or if I'm grocery shopping, or, you know, whatever it is, or, you know, if Rick and I want a date night and she goes over to her grandparents' house, you know, she'll take a bottle of frozen, well, warmed up, obviously, pumped milk then. But she has never had anything but my breast milk, if that answers the question properly. But we are starting solids next week once she's 6 months old, so I'm really nervous. But it'll also be nice to kind of, you know, milk will still be her main source of nutrition, but if she'll be taking a little bit less, then, you know, I'll be able to put away even more for her in our store. So it's a good thing. We do pump though. Pumping is really good too. How long did the cracked and bleeding nipples phase last for? This is such a good question. And a lot of people probably hear that and immediately like grab their boobs like, oh no, my poor boobs. You know, for me, it was probably the first week or two. Lanolin cream was so helpful. That, and there was one called Mother Love, which I'm obsessed with. I used it like, all you need is like one little tub of it and it'll last forever. We probably used maybe a quarter of the tub and we still have plenty left. And it's like $11 on Amazon, and I can link that down below for you guys. But yeah, it doesn't taste anything to the baby, so they're fine with having it on the nipple while they eat. And it will be super, super soothing for you. Another thing that helped for me was wearing nursing bras, like for sleep time, because there's like the usual ones that have the clips, so that way you can just unclip and feed your baby. But for nighttime, they're like these super soft, stretchy, like V-neck bras. And so when you feed your baby, you can literally just go like this and pull it aside, and then there you go. So it's softer on your nipples and it makes them feel a bit more secure. So between that and the cream, those were two things that really helped. But as far as how long the phase lasted, it was at least a week or two, but it gets better. I promise it gets better. What is one thing you wish you'd known about breastfeeding before you had Hazel? Oh, this is such a good question. How much I would love it. You know, the reason that I wanted to breastfeed was because I knew it was the best thing for the baby. And whenever anybody asked me when I was still pregnant, oh, are you gonna breastfeed? My answer was always that I would try, because there's so many women that don't succeed in it. And then also I had some concerns because my mom couldn't really breastfeed me. She did for like a month or two, and I guess according to her, I was just too hungry and her supply couldn't keep up. And then my sister, she said that she and her daughter struggled with it, so they never were able to do it. And I also had a breast augmentation surgery when I was 19, and a lot of women who have their boobs done aren't able to breastfeed. But the way that I had my surgery done, because I'm sure I'll get questions on it, is if you get it done underneath the like crease of the breast and underneath the muscle, there's usually never any issue with breastfeeding. But if you get it done like through the nipple or any other way, not any other way, but if specifically through the nipple, then there can be issues with severed milk ducts. But no, I was so lucky at the fact that, like, even though I had all these worries about, oh, like, will I be able to feed her? Will I be able to nurse? I don't know. I never had any issue. My supply has always been really great from day one. So I just wish I'd known that I didn't have anything to worry about, and that not only was I not gonna have anything to worry about, but I was going to like love it and enjoy it as much. And I think what helped me with that is, as I was going through those really first few tough weeks, I had a number of women in my life who had breastfed their children and who just raved about it and talked about how much they loved it. And that was really reassuring to know, like, okay, clearly a lot of women who do it are happy that they did. It's probably worth sticking out. So you know, here I am 6 months later, and I'm really glad that I have so far. Have you had any issues with mastitis or engorgement? If yes, what do you do to help it? No, actually, I haven't gotten mastitis. I feel really lucky. As far as engorgement goes, I mean, if I skip a session, especially at night, because typically what we'll do is I'll nurse her all throughout the day for her feedings, and then once she's asleep, I'll pump at night for one session before I go to sleep. But there are definitely some nights where I'm like, I'm way too lazy and tired, so I'm just gonna go to bed. And then I wake up in the morning and my boobs are like rock hard and leaking all through my pajamas. So the other issue that I've had in the past has been, I have had clogged ducts. Those are not particularly fun. What I will recommend as far as tips for helping those different things is there's an Instagram account called Legendary Milk. They are amazing, and they link so many great resources of how to help fix a clogged duct, or to help with mastitis, or to help with engorgement, getting the right flange sizes for your breast pump. There's so many great resources on that Instagram account. I highly recommend it. And they have awesome supplements that I also take that I'm gonna make another video about talking about. So as far as tips on how to get those issues resolved, I highly recommend looking at that account, and they have a ton of good resources for you. Do you think it's better to have a feeding schedule or feed baby on demand? So I do a little bit of both. I do what's called parent-led, I think it's called parent-led feeding. I think that's what it's called. I don't know. It's like, it's a certain style of feeding your baby. But basically what it is you feed your baby when they're hungry, but you don't go longer than 4 hours without feeding your baby. So I did that from day one, excluding nights, because I would wake up in the middle of the night. Like, I would literally set alarms on my phone to wake up and feed the baby, which I found out later was unnecessary, because if the baby has gained back their birth weight and they're sleeping fine, there's no need to wake them up to eat. But aside from nighttime, you know, I would never let her go more than 4 hours. If she seemed hungry before the 3 hour mark, I would feed her, and she did. There were definitely times, especially in those first 2 months, she would have a real witching hour around like 5, 6 o'clock, and she would just cluster feed. She would just cluster feed all night, and that was the only thing that would make it better, was to nurse. So feed your baby. If they're hungry, always feed your baby. But if it's gone longer than that 4-hour mark, also feed your baby. Just make sure they're getting the right nutrition. So that's how we've done it, and it's worked really well for us. Now at this point, Hazel eats pretty on the dot around every 3 hours, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less, depending on her nap schedule. And she eats around 6 ounces every feeding. So she's pretty consistent, which is great. And she's gotten really efficient in her timing. So she really doesn't eat longer than like 5 to 10 minutes total each session. It's usually no more than 10 minutes, sometimes closer to 5, which is really, really nice. How weird was the first time? You know, I was so nervous, but the first time that I breastfed her was in the hospital, and it was, gosh, within the first probably half hour of her being born, probably sooner than that. And there's actually studies and statistics to show that if you breastfeed within the first 2 hours of life, you have a much higher chance of having a successful breastfeeding relationship with your child. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I think the main thing is when babies are born right off the bat, they're very alert for those first hour, like that first hour or two, I'd say. So making sure that you get in a nursing session in those first 2 hours of life really does make a difference. So I didn't really have a chance to be scared. It was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. But there were nurses there who were like, okay, we're gonna put the baby right here. And any questions I had, they were there to help. In fact, I think at my hospital, the lactation consultant had been there for like 15 years. So at the hospital, there's going to be people to help you. If anything, that should be the least stressed you'll be about breastfeeding, is because you'll have so many resources to help and make sure that things are looking right and the latch is looking right and all that jazz. So I was nervous, but once push came to shove, I was like, all right, I guess we're doing this. Like, baby's here, she's on my boob, I guess we're going. So it worked out. Do you wash your pump after each use? I wash my pump so I wash it like in the sink probably every other day. And I change out the parts pretty regularly too. But what I do in between is I have these wipes that are sold I think they're by Medela, and they're like sanitizing wipes. So instead of having to take all the parts downstairs, wash them and bring them back up, I'll use a wipe to wipe it down, and every other day I'll clean it. But very, very, very important to clean your breast pump. You don't want there to be like mold growing in your parts. That is really, really bad and contaminates your milk, very obviously. So making sure that you have clean pump parts is very, very important, but also making sure that you have working pump parts. Again, that Instagram account that I mentioned, Legendary Milk, they talk all about replacing different parts of your pump, when you should do it, how often, signs that you need to, because if you don't replace them often enough, it can absolutely affect your supply, especially the duckbills. If you don't get those regularly enough, I think they're supposed to be replaced every 6 to 8 weeks. If you don't, then it will absolutely decrease your supply. So those are very important things to know, and to have the right flange sizes, but we're getting off topic. The answer is I clean my pump in the sink with soap and everything every other day. And then in between I use those sanitizing wipes. Are you still breastfeeding now? Yes, we are. Like I said earlier, Hazel is gonna be starting solids next week. The American Pediatrics Association recommends that babies are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months, and then incorporating breast milk as their main source of nutrition up until their first year. And then not everything, but a lot of people identify breastfeeding after the 1 year mark as extended breastfeeding. I'm one of the believers that I don't think that there is such thing as extended breastfeeding. I'm not the type of person who thinks like, oh, my child is 6 years old and we're still breastfeeding. Like, that's much. But as long as it's comfortable for the baby and it's comfortable for the mom, and it's working for both of you and you're both enjoying it, it's so helpful and so full of vitamins and nutrients for your baby. Actually, Rick and I both just got sick last week. He came home with a really, really nasty cold, and then as he was getting better, gave it to me. And so both of us are like so worried that Hazel's gonna catch it, right? With the 3 of us at home, I'm like, shoot, babies have super weak immune systems. Not only did she not catch it, but we know she had the virus because the day that I caught it, and I was really bad, I sent her over to her grandparents so that they could watch her so that I wouldn't get her sick, thinking that she still hadn't caught it somehow. But 2 days later, they get sick. So she clearly was carrying it, but somehow did not catch it, like as the actual sickness. And I know for a fact the reason is breastfeeding. One of the many, many amazing perks of breastfeeding is that it keeps your child safe from pathogens, because the way that breast milk works is when a pathogen comes into the environment, right? I naturally start producing antibodies, and those antibodies go through my breast milk. And so when she eats, she's naturally getting the antibodies that she needs to protect her from that pathogen, which is amazing. So naturally, before her own immune system's built it up, because she's drinking my milk, she's automatically building her immune system to fight that. So sure enough, she didn't get sick. So, I mean, there's so many amazing things about breastfeeding and why I love it. And I haven't really gotten a chance to touch on them in this video, but aside from the fact that, hello, it's free, that's amazing, but it's also easy. You don't have to worry about, like, especially in the beginning with those night feedings, you don't have to like get up and make a bottle and warm it. It's especially if the baby's sleeping in the same room as you or even the same bed. She wakes up at 4 a.m. You're like, oh, okay, stick her on the boob. She eats, you guys go back to sleep. So much easier, so way more sleep for both of you. But overall, just the nutrition and the health that the baby gets. Like, there's no formula that compares to breast milk. And let me just say also, there's nothing wrong with formula feeding. Like, if you can't breastfeed for whatever reason, totally fine. I was only breastfed for the first, I think, month, and then I was on formula. Like, fed is best. As long as your baby's getting nutrition, that's all that matters. And formula has come a long way in recent years. Like, it might not be as good as breast milk is, but it's really, really good. There's nothing wrong with it. But I just mean, if you have the option and if you have the ability to breastfeed your baby, there's so many awesome perks that come with it for your health, for baby's health. Studies show that women lose weight faster when they breastfeed in the beginning. I don't know how true that is. Although I lost most of my weight, I'm still holding on to the last 10 pounds while I'm feeding her. I guess there's also studies that show that not most, but some moms don't lose the last of the baby weight until they wean. Overall, it just helps your uterus shrink back down after you have your baby, because your body naturally produces the hormones that causes your uterus to contract back down when you're breastfeeding. I mean, I could go on and on. The health benefits for the baby, in my opinion, are the most important. But I think there's also studies that show that women who breastfeed have a less chance of getting cancer later in life, certain kinds of cancer. I think actually it might be breast cancer. I need to find the exact study on it. But there's just so many great things that the human body can do when it comes to nursing your children, and for benefits for both the baby and for the mom. So I'm a huge proponent of breastfeeding, and that's why I'm like, why has it taken me so long to make this video? Because it's something that I'm so excited to talk to you guys about. And I think that actually was my last question. You guys answered, like I said, a lot of them were duplicates because I think a lot of people want to know the same things. But ultimately, like I said, it's been a wonderful relationship that Hazel and I have built through nursing. I'm so, so glad we stuck it out. So if you are a new mom and you're in those first few early days and you're trying and you've got the cracked nipples that are bleeding and you're in pain and it's not comfortable and it takes forever, I promise you, those days do get better. It takes time. It can take days, weeks, it can take a month. It's different for everyone. But I promise if you stick it out, it's totally worth it. So anyway, that is all from me, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you guys are new to my channel, again, my name is Hayli, and this is my family channel with my husband, Rick, and my daughter, Hazel. So you guys can subscribe here, called Becoming Baez. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HayliNick if you'd like to see more content from me. And I think that's everything. I've got my sleeping dog right here. I know, hi Ball. Anyway, that's all from you guys, and we'll see you next time.